We're here in Mendon, Massachusetts at Southwick Zoo, and we're here with Chris Hamlin. He's an elephant keeper. And Chris, I have some questions for you, and hopefully these questions will help shed some light on Betty and her keeper, about what life was like in 1822 as an elephant keeper and as Betty. So I was wondering, first off, I should ask you a basic question, and that is whether Betty was an Asian elephant or an African elephant, based on the broadside that we have.
Well, based on the broadside and based on the fact that it was a date, she was definitely an Asian elephant. They didn't really start importing African elephants until the the early 1970s. So up until then, African elephants were actually considered untrainable.
And the broadside says that Betty was 12 years old, so does that mean she was an adult?
No, she was still a kid. They're not full grown into their late 20s. And they'll live into their 70s or 80s. Actually, Judy here, she's about 57 years of age. I'm sure that he either bought it from possibly a circus or from an animal importer of some sort. And most likely he bought her when she was very young, maybe 2 years of age or so. And I don't know, maybe he possibly trained her, maybe he had somebody else train her, but most likely back then he probably trained her himself. Mm-hmm. Which then she'd probably have him about 10 years or so. So it sounded like he kind of knew what he was doing.
Yeah, but a lot of people imagine that the keeper and Betty were traveling with a circus, but actually there was just the two of them. They would walk from town to town throughout the Blackstone Valley, or probably throughout New England. And so what was that? What would that have been like? What kind of relationship would the keeper have had with Betty?
It would have been. It was a 24-hour relationship. I mean, these guys are very, very intelligent, and they're very social animals. So, in order for them to really work with you and do it well for an extended period of time, they really need to have your trust, and they really need to have a really solid relationship with you. You're constantly taking them into new places they're unfamiliar with, and so you kind of have to ease them into those places. They have to trust you to be able to go into a new building, a new tent.
And this would have been the same in 1822.
Yeah, it would have been the same.
Can you imagine, suppose you're walking to Chepatchet from, let's say, from Mendon. What would that have been like? Would you have ridden on Betty?
Most likely you would have ridden on her, and back then you can't, obviously transport your own hay, so a lot of that time would have been spent grazing. Grass fields, trees, and kind of walking as you're grazing. And so she would have gotten the diet that she needed, and at the same time they would have gotten to where they needed to go. Judy, come on, we're over here, back up.
And what about when it was time to sleep at night? How would the keeper have done that most likely?
The norm was back then is they'd just tie a rope around their own foot and then tie a rope to the elephant's foot, and the elephant would sleep there. The keeper would sleep somewhere around the elephant, most likely under the elephant. And so if the elephant started to wander off, it would obviously have woken up the keeper.
Oh, yeah.
And so after a while, then the elephant just knows that at that time it's just time to sleep, and they would sleep.
Yeah. Now, at a show, Betty would have been around a whole lot of people she had never met before. What would the keeper have, well, first off, how would Betty have felt about other people all around her?
Most likely she would have, they would have been probably a source of treats to her, and she probably wouldn't have been cautious or on the defensive with them as long as the keeper was there. Because, like I said, the relationship takes on one of that of a parent, to where the elephant understands as long as the keeper's there, there's nothing that's really going to harm them. And that's where a lot of the trust is built up.
Oh, yeah. In the summer of 1826, Betty was shot and killed right here in downtown Chepatchet on this bridge. Now, most of Betty was buried here in this hollow, and the rest of Betty got tanned and stuffed at a tannery that used to be back here. No one knows where stuffed Betty is today. But people here in Chepatchet apparently feel really sad about the event, so they try to keep Betty's memory alive. School children have painted Betty's picture for display around town, and Chepatchet has this fiberglass elephant, Mr. Potato Head, in front of the town hall. And the bridge, it's known officially in town as Elephant Bridge.